Yeah, I'm out of Cure. I got out of Cure a while back after it went crazy. Kind of felt like it went up too much. I didn't even know they had. I mean, I guess it's not surprising they had an FDA meeting. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe they'll change their mind. I mean, it's a very weird situation. But when a stock goes up so much so fast, I kind of, unless it's really special, I tend to get out. And I wanted to stick to my quantum shorts, so I basically sold that immediately. I'm really just short only. Where's my P&L? We're all talking about Cure, Qure, which is the topic du jour. FDA's decided that the Cure data is not good enough to get approval on. Dad life is good, thank you. Excited to see Sarepta's numbers. I think it'll be good. All right, let's see some quantum bleeding here. I like this. Oh, good for you, Andre. Yeah, Huntington's has a pretty big community. I don't know. It kind of feels like maybe it's a buy down here, but I also feel like FDA is gonna not chicken out at some point. This is the FACO trade. FDA always chickens out. The Elon post didn't really make any sense and obviously isn't helping these stocks. So, I mean, if Elon got into quantum computing for some reason, that would be very odd. And yeah, I'm not sure what he'd want out of that. The FDA has been wild. I kind of like Biohaven. Biohaven is kind of a. Oh man, I didn't get a chance to buy it. That sucks. It was down like 20, 30%. Biohaven is Cedar, not Seaber. Seaber's that seems to be the only place going crazy. So I didn't study the extropic thing too closely, but I'm very happy that Beth is getting some time in the sun. Elon said something about quantum on the moon. Didn't really make too much sense. Wagwan. Yeah, I agree that the FDA is a bit of a shit show. You got Vinay sitting there like, I make the rules around here. Me. Toppy's in. Oh, Toppy's in. It's a lot of crazy posts on Twitter, man. Some Looney Tunes. Wagon, mi general. So how do you guys know this stuff? Secret Jamaican slang. Uh, it's hard to say if, how much of a bubble we're in. I think we're obviously in a bubble in some stocks, like Joby and Oklo and Quantum and stuff like that. But will they throw out the baby with the bathwater? Yeah, it feels like the FDA is very much capricious right now, a little shambolic, to use one executive's favorite word. But what are we going to do? You know, this is part of biotech investing. This is why you always gonna kind of have to keep it on you, as they say, where I'm from. When that stock doubled, data looked good, looked good enough for approval. I bought it, I sold it. Next question. I feel like Floyd Mayweather after Victor Ortiz, accusing him of hitting him with a dirty shot. That's all she wrote. Touch gloves. Just protect yourself at all times. Boom, boom. That's all she wrote. But no, in all seriousness, Biohaven's a really exciting one. I've been talking to a lot of people about Biohaven. We'll have to see, you know, how exactly, you know, but you know, that's you got it exactly right, Josh. Josh knows. You know, we're basically going back to a time in FDA where it's double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, or nothing else. And I'm not sure that's a bad thing. You know, it's certainly possible that we go back to that time, and that's, you know, not awful. You know, I do think we're in a different place from that FDA. So if you look back to 20 years ago, I guess I can. Was that what, did he beat Goresh and then threw the queen into the crowd? That was like a rock star move right there. That's Bon Jovi. No, so the 90s, you know, basically were dominated by statins, ARBs, atypicals, which are D2s. These are the biggest classes of medicine. In the 2000s, you had TNF alpha. And then let me sort of show what the rare disease world was. You had Gaucher and the other, well, you had mostly Gaucher there, and then the other ERTs. And then you started to get into gene therapy, especially for DMD and other areas. And so, like, if you think about, like, this continuum, let's see, what else was big? Some of these medicines needed flexibility, some of them didn't. So the FDA provided flexibility for some of these things, like Gaucher. Let's say, I don't know, let's see, MS drugs were big in this era. I guess what I'm saying is that to go back to a time where you need only RCTs it feels off, because RCTs make sense for populations that require them. So I mean, you could still do RCTs for PD1 and GLP, but we're starting to get to a point where, I've said this many times over the last 5 years, we're in a period where there's sort of vanishing numbers of diseases. You know, the amount of diseases left to treat has become, you know, fewer and fewer, as like these will never need new treatments in practice, right? Statins and ARBs are generic now, as are D2s. And so as time goes on, you know, a lot of these drugs go generic. Cystic fibrosis here. And like cystic fibrosis, there was a double-blind RCT that worked really well. For DMD, there wasn't. And then for SMA, it depends. There were yeses and nos there, but back in like PNH era, for eculizumab, you had you know, double-blind placebo-controlled studies. I'm trying to remember what happened with Gaucher. I want to say there was not a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. So it's hard to discern a trend, I guess, but it seems to me that going back to an era of prove it, you know, trials need to work, period, no flexibility, no interpretation. The purist in me says that's not such a bad thing. You know, we're running out of diseases, so we're going after these little diseases, and we need to kind of be flexible about them. I guess like you look at AD here, didn't do much revenue, but kind of a murky approval there. And each division of FDA has its own opinions. Like Biohaven is at neuro, which has like traditionally been very forgiving. And then you have Sieber Cedar on top of this. Tidmarsh resigned? When did Tidmarsh resign? Placed on leave? What? Personal conduct probe. Damn. Wow. Long-standing vendetta against Kevin Tang. I thought he worked for Kevin Tang. Yeah, I was busy repairing a database and with my family yesterday. That's wild. So what happened? He was the CEO of La Jolla for Kevin. Data falling out. When did he resign as CEO of La Jolla? I think I remember this. He kind of fucked up, maybe. Didn't do great at La Jolla. Did La Jolla get acquired, by the way? I think it did. Is it Aurinia now? I don't know. Oh, Kevin's very successful. Yeah, Philip, I don't know. The RWE study did work technically. My portfolio has been looking svelte lately, so I need to get back up to. I need quantum to hang in there. He made some LinkedIn post. I saw the LinkedIn post. Risk is tightening up. Keep some powder dry. What happened to Capper? Somebody said there was a paper, right? Oh God. Benetech had some news today that looked interesting. Quarterly earnings with Sarepta. Okay, is this another quantum head fake? It goes down 5%. Start to pile in, feel comfortable and short again, and then just gets smacked.
Comp news alert, OpenAI, Amazon strike $38 billion agreement for ChatGPT maker to use AWS.
Yeah. It's pretty much my whole portfolio, short quantum. It's been an interesting ride. Not a huge fan of Bion tech, but I don't know. I'm keep an open mind. Yeah, I'm still long Spruce. I did add a little bit to it.
Shkreli.
I don't really trade government bonds. That's not my thing. Yeah, I haven't looked at the new paper from Capper, but I don't I expect it's a lot like their other bullshit. I'm not sure if Tidmarsh leaving affects Sarepta or not. I mean, look, everything's obviously in a bit of disarray. The chickens are clucking. FDA is running amok. What's going on? The chickens are quite upset. You know, this is why I wouldn't say I don't miss drug development, but I would say that, like, man, it's a tough space, especially rare diseases. But, like, you either have the goods. The thing about drug development, I mean, you either have, in my opinion, you like, if you don't have the nuts, poker talk, I guess, for a second, you got to be really careful about drug development because it's like just the craziest risk you're taking, putting your everything in, is regulated in FDA, right? There's no, everything you do is FDA has to bless it. And the FDA at any moment can decide, no, we're going to do it this way, or no, we're going to do it that way. And, there's not much you can do. You can't sue the FDA. I mean, it's really hard to beat them. Their scientific opinion tops yours. So you basically have to go in there with my view, the way I do things is you try to go in there with the most kind of like conservative viewpoint you can. Because if they, have this perspective that's conservative, you have to deal with it. Now, if you can get, a little bit of leeway, that's great, but it's really hard to, you can see how my old company, Travere, is sort of handling this. I'm not really close to the story anymore, but it seems like they've navigated it okay. But it's one of these things where every medicine has this question mark, where it's not exactly simple to resolve every dispute and every question about it. And I really am kind of like that old school believer of like either you have, like, I would never want to be UniQure or Sarepta as a company owner, or company manager, because it's like you're going to FDA with the hat in hand, right? You're saying, please let me let me get approval. And that's just, you don't want to ever be in that position in life where you're sort of begging and pleading. Now, somehow Sarepta got away with it, partially because the, really, really tough disease. It's that sort of makes sense. These kids have this terrible illness, but that's not what you want to base your whole existence and company on. Like, just praying that the FDA sees it your way. You want to deliver results that are like, okay, we hit statistical significance. You want the FDA to like roll out the red carpet for you and be like, we're so proud of you guys. Way to go. Way to make America look great. That's the kind of thing you want. And obviously medicine is messy and it doesn't always work that way, but the perspective has to be, we didn't hit the primary endpoint. It failed. It doesn't work. And unfortunately, the problem with that is that we've had this slippery slope where it's like, well, you have to have compassion for patients. And if patients are saying, we want this, but it doesn't work, what do you do? It's a really tough place to be where it's like, I hear you. And this is kind of a political partisan thing. Like, if you're, think about it from the political perspective, if you're dying and you say, I want a chance to live, I need this drug, go F yourself. Who are you to tell me what I can and can't do to save my own life? Even if this drug doesn't work, I want to take it. Now, the FDA, the Democrats, to some extent, I hate to make this partisan, but it is a bit of a partisan thing. It's a liberty thing. The Democrats say, no, we know what's better for you. And we know that this drug is dangerous. We know better than you and your doctor. And, sorry, not sorry, but you're not getting this thing. And if you want to get it, you can get it in a clinical trial. Why do we're not going to let you, take the risk of having it FDA approved when you can take it, just take it in a clinical trial. Now the company says, oh, we can't afford to give you this drug in a clinical trial because there's a lot of costs that come with this. We need the reward of an approval. And the FDA says, sorry, you're not getting that from us. Well, you can do all the clinical trials you want. That type of dynamic is kind of the problem that's at the situation here. Because ultimately, if you were trying to do that for I don't know, an Alzheimer's drug or a diabetes drug, maybe diabetes is a better point than Alzheimer's. It's simple to say, go do another trial. Nobody's going to be, there's no problem with waiting. But if you have a disease for DMD or Huntington's, look, my life is on the line right now. I can't wait. And the fact that these trials can cost hundreds of millions of dollars doesn't help, right? So it's a really tough place to be. Yeah, we'll do that soon. The biggest cost in clinical trials is recruitment, opening up trial sites and paying patients and stuff like that. Cure, I don't know what to do. It feels like there's nothing to do here. You could see it work both ways. FDA is well within their rights to say do a real phase 3. At the same time, you got people dying and of Huntington's. You got a brain operation you have to do this trial. But if I'm FDA, I'm going to say, listen, I want to know that your drug works, and so you do a control group, and we could take it from there, and I think that's quite reasonable. So I really don't know what to tell you. It's this really tough position, and I thought the FDA has historically been pretty forgiving in situations like this. They're pretty generous, and just would approve it. But I think, clearly there's a move in the opposite direction. I do think the FDA gets it right on balance. And again, it's a matter of perspective, right? I mean, if you take the patient perspective here, this drug should be approved. If you take the scientific perspective here, the drug should not be approved. Oh, we're definitely doing it, Flood. Just trust. Trust. Hyperliquid seems to be taking over the world, whether I like it or not. So whether I like it or not is irrelevant. But yeah, we are on it. Exactly. Kev makes the point here, which is, our job is not to gamble. You can gamble on any stock on my front screen right now if you want to. That's not what we do. We are trying to be careful allocators of capital. I mean, you can sort of try to sit and wait and hope that FDA will change its mind. I mean, that doesn't sound great to me. Now, if you have an edge on, you follow it really closely and you say, no, the FDA is definitely going to change their mind. I mean, I don't want to be involved in a soap opera. This isn't my... I mean, if I was running a hedge fund, I probably would, start to think about, okay, how do I force this? How do I talk to the... If you want to really do diligence on this, you go ahead and you talk to... I would talk to people in the Huntington's community, try to rile them up, try to get them, if they're not riled up already. How is the FDA saying no to this? Wage bloody war, bloody murder, We have to, go to war here for our patients, our family members, our loved ones. And you just go ham. And, now you're still kind of gambling, but it's a risk-adjusted gamble. And as I've said before, like, it's $100+ stock if they got approval. The stock stalled out at 60-something. I sold it at like 50-something, to be honest. And, that's where we're at. It doubled so fast that, there was no reason to stay in there other than greed. If you want the last $2 of every trade you're ever going to make, like, to me, that's, for me, I sold. I thought there were better trades out there. I don't blame you if you stayed in, but, if you stayed in with your whole portfolio, crazy overinvested, then don't blame me. I still, kind of like the drug, but I think the FDA is well within its right to take this perspective, which, you try not to go all in on something unless it's bulletproof. And even then, you don't know if it's going to be bulletproof. Like, you look at Abivax, right? It's kind of bulletproof, but we don't know the patent situation on Abivax. So, like, there's no perfect investment. I think tenacity is way more important than IQ in investing and in investing, it's sort of this, like, uncommon common sense. IQ probably is a net negative after the right amount. I think you got to be clever, but you certainly don't have to be a genius or a math genius or something like that. And I'm happy every time I look at a math book and I find myself confused. I'm a little bit happy because it means that I'm not a genius, at least, on that level. That there are a lot of people smarter than me, and I'm happy for that, because if you're too smart, I think there are a lot of people in investing who are, they're too smart for their own good. And I think, if you watch videos of Druckenmiller and stuff like that, no doubt he's clever, but he probably is not doing quantum physics. Business, I think, is, a mix of being clever and perseverance. But I think with both, you start to have diminishing returns and maybe even negative returns after 120 IQ. I think you probably do want those 20 extra IQ points, but you probably don't want 40 extra. How to be a genius. Unfortunately, you're either born with it or you're not. When I say math, I don't mean algebra or calculus. I mean real math. Differential topology. some shit like that. Let's see, what do I got here? Here we go. This thing. metric spaces, cohomologies. Yeah, yeah, exactly. German farmer common sense. Yeah, I have nothing to do today, so I'll be up after the close and so forth. All right, we're back to 300%. This portfolio is crazy volatile. 170K for me is 300%. 200K is 400%. I don't know if the FDA will reverse the cure decision. It seems like they would, but I could see them standing tall too, standing on business. Maybe I'll buy a little cure. I don't know, because I'm also dealing with, you guys know me well enough that when I'm dealing with a binary endpoint, I try to clear binary event. I try to clear my portfolio and just focus on that. And Capricorn is coming up. Yeah, the quantums have been very volatile lately. I'm happy they're down. Yeah, name here. I think that's right. It's a bit of a coin flip that we have no edge in. At the same time, the risk reward is pretty good. I mean, the FDA, we're calling it FACO. The FDA always chickens out. They've chickened out with Sarepta. And, this government is quite malleable relative to old ones, where like the FDA used to, when they made a decision, that was it. You just could not change their mind. Now you send some people to DC, you bark on social media, slide me 50 G's. I'm kidding about that. And before you know it, you might get an approval. I might talk to some people for you. But, that never used to happen. It used to be only you had a rat's chance in hell for them to reverse. People didn't even bother appealing. Slide me 50 racks. You guys slide me 50 racks. You want approval. It's all about 50 racks. I don't know CRBU. Sorry. I just answered the question on Cure over and over and over and over again. I think it's probably 50-50, maybe 60-70% FDA reverses, so it's probably pretty good long. I just don't, gambling, Yes, I'm still in Spruce. Spruce Moose. No, 5% in spruce is okay. Yeah, this today is why people don't trade biotech. This kind of thing. This is why people say no mas. Everybody has to get hit once in biotech, and you say, you know what? Maybe I'm good. Maybe I don't need this shit in my life. I saw Scott Adams. I saw some people trying to fucking scam him with ivermectin. I feel bad. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Hey, Chris. Morning.